Hello book lovers and welcome to Book Talk Radio Club. My name is Claire Perkins and today I'm talking to Warren Holston and Christy Laneri. Warren has worked throughout the intelligence community, Department of Defence and defence industry for more than 30 years. He wrote the poems of Peace in Darkness over several decades of extensive travel to more than 84 countries as he served in Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal, the Central Intelligence Agency and the US Special Operations Command. The poems are based on a lifetime of experiences with dozens of cultures, religions and belief systems, both in peace and war. Christy Laneri has more than 25 years of experience as an illustrator, educator and artist since starting her career in the Central Intelligence Agency. Much of her work is influenced by her exposure to diverse cultures and her life experiences abroad. Hi Warren, hi Christy. First of all, welcome and thank you for coming on Book Talk Radio Club.
Hi. Thank you, Claire, for having us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. Warren, Peace in Darkness, a great title for a book, but what does it mean?
So, this is interesting because we were having difficulty determining what the title should be, because you always wanted to catch someone's interest, but at the same time, and very few words represent the book. So over the course of the time that we were working on the book, over a year, we must have been through dozens of variations of the title. And then we started to see a common thread through all of the works that we chose to go into the book. And it was really about exploring our biases and how we view the world and situations based on our perspective and where we come from. And many of the poems actually talk about two sides of the same issue and looking at it from two perspectives. And so we kind of settled on Peace and Darkness because we wanted to represent that you could find peace in complicated circumstances, or the dichotomy of life.
The poems are based on a lifetime of experiences with dozens of cultures, religions and belief systems during decades of travel to many different countries. What was it, Warren, that first made you put pen to paper?
It really started, I think, probably back in 83, 84, when I was in the Philippines. I was in the Navy, and we had pulled into the Philippines for a couple of weeks. And I was on the street one night, on the street one night, and this young boy, Filipino boy, had stolen some sailor's watch. And he's running down the street, and a police officer stepped out into the street and hit the boy across the face with a baton.
Oh, God.
And just left him laying in the street as everybody stepped over him, and then picked up the watch and handed it back to the sailor. And it was at that moment that I realized the value of life is not the same throughout the world. And it was all a matter of your perspective and how you grew up. And that's really, I probably wrote that incident down and started from there for the next 30 years.
You've served in the Navy Explosive Ordnance Disposal, the CIA, and the US Special Operations Command, and must have seen and experienced, well, you've just told us, some really horrible things that most everyday people would not. Did you find writing your poems a form of catharsis?
That's interesting, because no, not really. I found it more of trying to justify in my mind or understand in my mind the differences throughout the world, and really understand what made people view the world the way they did. And I just began collecting and writing down my words and my thoughts, and eventually worked from stories down to complex thought in short, very concise verses.
Those were more than tough jobs, let's face it. Did you ever find yourself being teased for writing poetry in the midst of it all?
So this is my favorite question of all, because you would expect with the people that I grew up with and hung around and what I did, that would be the case.
Yeah.
Because I know many true heroes from the last last 20 years. But as it turns out, it was absolutely the opposite of that.
Good.
The very people that you would expect would tease me about that are actually the ones that the works most resonate with, because they've seen it, they understand it, and it's a way for them to kind of view the world in terms that they understand.
Right. Do you think the poems help them make sense of it?
Yes, absolutely. And just on a little side note, when we originally started putting this together, we thought it was very creative to have words integrated into the artwork. There's not that many things like this. And we thought, this will be, people will love this. It'll be art. The artist and the poets will love it. And actually, I mean, that's okay. But the people that truly have given us the most feedback and are the warriors, the soldiers, the people that have served their countries, regardless of the country, outside of their country, where they have to experience the world and the darkness that people really can bring on other people.
What made you decide to go into these kind of government jobs and departments, if you don't mind me asking?
I grew up, my father was in the Navy, and he served a short time in the Navy, and I decided that that's what I wanted to do, and if I did, I wanted to be in bomb disposal. So that was my plan, and I had every intention of staying for a career.
Right.
And then about 6 years in, I was recruited by CIA to be able to continue to do some of the stuff that I was doing, but not have to be in the military.
Right.
And that's where it all started. And it just became a matter then with Special Operations Command and industry of knowing people and staying in kind of the same type of work.
The words and artwork are based on a collective lifetime lived within dozens of cultures, religions and belief systems. The art often addresses subjects we all think about but are afraid to admit we consider. The works are intended to define the peace and darkness. Let's talk about the artwork. Hi Christy, sorry to leave you out for a bit there. How did you get involved with Warren and illustrating peace in darkness?
Hi, so thanks for having me here too. Well, Warren and I actually met when we were very young and worked for the CIA together.
Right.
And we lived our lives separately for about 25 years. And through the magic of social media, we came back together. And he said, so do you still do that drawing thing? And I was like, yeah, kind of. I kind of do. And he's like, so I have this idea. And it's kind of all started from there.
How did you translate Warren's poetry into illustrations? I find that fascinating. What was the process?
So it's a very interesting process and not really your typical illustrator, writer relationship, because we kind of attribute it to like a Bernie Taupin, Elton John type of thing, where Bernie writes the words and Elton does the music, and they do it separately on their own ways. Warren sends me the words. I usually take certain words inside the poem, and I will like research that word, and I do a lot of Google searches for images for certain words or things like that. And strangely, the image ends up coming to me and how it's going to look, and I'll do like a rough sketch and send it to him. And so far, he hasn't come back and been like, no, we don't like that. Or same thing with his words. I don't go, oh, that's terrible. So it's a really interesting process.
Yeah.
We do things separately. But when it all comes together, it works.
I see from your bio that you have over 25 years of experience as an illustrator, educator and artist since starting your career in the Central Intelligence Agency. I mean, forgive my ignorance here, but how do you use illustrations and art in the CIA?
So, actually, the CIA employs a lot of artists.
Right.
I was I was not an illustrator in the CIA. I worked for disguise branch, so I disguised people that were going overseas to do operations and things like that.
What a cool thing to do.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. So, yeah, my aunt got me an interview when I was in college, and Tony Mendez was the one who hired me. He's the same guy that wrote Argo.
Right.
Or that Argo is about the movie. So, yeah, it was pretty good run.
I just got this vision in my head just now of you standing in front of someone drawing a moustache on their face.
Well, it's not too far from the truth. I was mostly gluing them on, but...
You have a BA in fine art. Is there a particular artist that inspired you or your style? And I'm not talking about moustaches here.
So, that was a really interesting question. When I really started doing art, I was obviously influenced by the masters, the Van Goghs and the Monets.
Sure.
Because I had a very loose impressionistic style. But when it comes to drawing the pictures for the Warren's writings, I actually tried really hard to make each piece stand and represent the words. So that actually dictates the style that I might use.
Right.
So, and also the medium that I might use. I always try to diversify. Sometimes I'll use ink, and sometimes I'll use acrylics. Sometimes the colors are cheery, and sometimes they're dark. So I get influenced by a lot of different things. Even, people on social media and Instagram and things like that.
Yeah.
It's all around.
Yes, that's so interesting. Okay, back to you, Warren. You're receiving high praise on Amazon for Peace in Darkness, including thought-provoking words and mind-bending illustrations. And what a beautiful and thought-provoking book. And I have to say, this is one of my favourites. This book should be read like one enjoys a fine bottle of wine. Who did you write these poems for, Warren?
I actually wrote them for people like me that had seen the darkness of humanity, so to speak, and didn't end up with PTSD, didn't end up with any of that, but still has to live with it forever.
Right.
Seeing it, knowing it, and it was interesting because kind of putting this together, we often end up, especially in the government or the military, you often end up, if not supporting, at least having to be sympathetic to two sides of the same issue. And so really, I put all of this together to help people like me resolve that.
The words and images can be haunting, but if you open your mind, you can see there is truth in the art, regardless of your beliefs or perspective. What does that mean?
So that actually goes back to the being able to explore two sides of the same issue. And I'll give you a quick example. One of the pieces in the book represents an elderly man who is very sick and obviously dying, and a dog that is elderly and is being put to sleep.
Right.
And so when we talk about it can be haunting, but open your mind, is the fact that a lot of people actually think about terms of human euthanasia, but even in their mind, they don't want to admit that they would consider it. And so that's what I mean by there's a lot of truth in all of the works if you're willing to actually look at it.
You're also the author of a personal security handbook titled Beware the Predator, The American's Guide to Personal Security, which shows you how to use traditional personal security tradecraft techniques to reduce your exposure and enhance your security while continuing to enjoy the conveniences of modern life. Okay, I have to ask, what are personal security tradecraft techniques?
So, when I left the agency, when I left CIA, years went by, and then I was thinking, well, I would like to write a book, but I don't want to write a tell-all book, like many people
Sure.
Because I wasn't unhappy, and I was very successful because of them. So I decided to take what I learned in the agency about surviving in the world, or tradecraft, and applying it in very simple terms that lay people could use in their everyday life. The banker that goes to work 9 to 5 every day, or the housewife that teaches part-time school. They could use every day to make themselves safer from being compromised on the internet for having their personal information stolen, all the way down to how to protect your children in certain situations around the house or on the internet. So the book is Personal Tradecraft is really those things that you can do. Shred your material before you put it in the trash.
Right.
Lock down your Wi-Fi, and it explains to you how to do all of these different things, all the way down to travel tips, where to sit on an airplane, how to buy your tickets, all of those sorts of things. So it basically just keeps people to help people from being too terribly exposed in a world where everyone exposes everything.
Interesting. So what's next on the book front for Warren Holston?
We have started book 2, art and poetry, and this one is going to be called Asylum in the Mind.
Good title.
Asylum in the Mind, and I just sent over 8 sets of words or verses to Christy a couple of weeks ago, and she started with the illustrations. And as I was informed, they're really, really dark, so I might need to come up with some happy subjects.
Lastly, where can people purchase Peace in Darkness?
You can get it off of our website, peaceindarkness.com. It's also available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble.
Wonderful. Well, thank you very much, Warren and Christy. That was actually very fascinating. Please come back on Book Talk Radio Club again. I'd love to chat with you and hear more. In the meantime, good luck for the future, and thank you, everyone, for listening to Book Talk Radio Club. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you for having us.
My pleasure. Okay, now, bye.